Well, hello there, everyone, and welcome in to another episode of the RTI and VR2 Recruiting Podcast. I am Nathaniel Rutherford, the managing editor of RockyTopInsider.com, joined by Brandon Martin of VR2 for this podcast. Matt should be joining me later on this week. We'll try to do two for you guys this week. I know it's the holiday week, it's Christmas, and then we have New Year's coming up next week too, but our goal is to have two come out for you guys. I think the second one of this week will be a mailbag, so we will be answering questions you guys have. We know you probably have a ton about this class Tennessee just signed, about who Tennessee is targeting. And Brandon, you and I touched on a little bit earlier in the last podcast we did in last week to recap Tennessee's early signing day class. We talked mostly about the class. We ended the podcast talking about guys, Tennessee's top targets. How do we kind of think that Tennessee is going to move forward? Before we can, there's a couple guys we want to add to that list that we didn't touch on, I think, in the last podcast. That actually, if you all want to go to RockyTopInsider.com, you'll be able to see. I did a list breaking down Tennessee's top targets, really kind of what we know of. Obviously, I think the recruiting board could change a little bit between now and sometime in January. You'll probably see a few more offers go out. You'll probably see a few guys come off the board as guys cancel visits or commit elsewhere or whatever. But as of right now, I put on there, I think, like 8 or 9 guys that Tennessee is likely to really target between now and National Signing Day in February. But Brandon, there's one guy we talked about a little bit in the last podcast as kind of the obvious top target. But now it's been, I think, since we last recorded, he has come out and confirmed that he actually did sign in the earliest signing period, but he's still waiting to announce on January 2nd, and that is Darnell Washington, of course, the 5-star tight end out of Las Vegas. Brandon, how are we feeling about this? I know there's been a lot of crystal balls rolling in for Georgia for him. It seems like it's the Bulldogs for him. If it is the Bulldogs, this can be another segue into kind of where we're going to go after this. But if it is the Bulldogs for Tennessee, is it Dee Beckwith or bust at tight end? I mean, do they have any other options besides maybe turning Dee Beckwith into a tight end if they get him? Because it does seem like it's essentially down to Tennessee and Florida for him. I know he named the final three of Tennessee, Florida, Kentucky, but it does seem like it's Tennessee, Florida as kind of the front runners. Is it Darnell Washington / Dee Beckwith at tight end, and Tennessee doesn't take a tight end, or just what do you see playing out here? And are you buying the kind of public perception that it seems to be that Darnell Washington is going to go to Georgia?
In regards to where Darnell Washington is going to go, if I was in a situation with what I know, and Darnell has, I'll say this, Darnell has kept this remarkably quiet. Mm-hmm. I am astounded it has stayed this quiet, because normally by this point we have heard where someone's going. We know something has gotten leaked, definite, and it hasn't yet. And part of me thinks maybe part of that comes from Darnell being in Las Vegas and not with Quavaris Crouch. It was an issue with him last year, but he was also in South Carolina. He was down here close to a lot of the schools that were after him. I think maybe Darnell being in Vegas has got something to do with it. But Darnell's kept this really quiet. If somebody asked me for a crystal ball today, I wouldn't be able to make one. I think it is a coin toss between Tennessee and Georgia. I think I am not going to be surprised wherever it goes. Now, I know that a lot of people have felt like, and it has in the circles that cover this, it was pretty common knowledge that he had been viewed as a silent commit to Georgia for a while. Mm-hmm. But that was also before Tennessee kind of got that unexpected unofficial, and then got the last official, and have had him raving about Niedermeyer. And so I tell people, like, I understand that he has been a silent commitment to Tennessee or to Georgia for some time. Jay Hardy was a silent commitment to Tennessee for a while.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I know those situations are different, and there was the issue of Tennessee maybe not pursuing Hardy and making him the priority that he wanted to be, but you're still silent until you get your name on the dotted line. Now, his name is on the dotted line. The only two places, I guess, that would know that are going to be the school he went to and the school he didn't choose, and they're going to go ahead and let him announce that, have his day at the Under Armour game. But the good thing about that is the coaches already know. Yeah. So if it was Tennessee, then Tennessee knows they have Darnell Washington. They know they don't have that spot available, and they know how to proceed. If they don't have him in the class, then at this point they know he's going to Georgia, and they have the option of going ahead and focusing on tight end recruits, resetting their board there, and deciding who they're going to pursue. I still think it's a coin toss. Yes, he was a silent to Georgia. Yes, we know he signed. I've not heard anything from anyone that indicates to me that they know who he is signed with yet. You have the people's suspicions and he was a silent to Georgia for a long time, but I've not heard anybody say, I know for sure he's down there.
Right.
And that's just me. You look at it and go, well, he was a silent to Georgia for a long time. The other side of it is, what do we always say, man? Follow the visits, follow the relationships. Well, he's been to Tennessee the most. He got the last official visit to Tennessee, and his closest relationship, in his own words, is Brian Niedermeyer. So I think it could go either way. Absolutely could go either way. If Tennessee doesn't get Darnell Washington, I do think they need a tight end in this class, and I think it's taken Dee Beckwith and hoping you can make him into a tight end. I think that's the only option you've got at this point. Tennessee waited maybe a bit too long to go after another tight end. They sort of hedged their bets on Darnell Washington or bust. Now they're looking at Dee Beckwith, and if you're talking about landing Dee Beckwith as a consolation prize, you're doing something right.
Yeah.
That's a heck of a football player. And even if they get Washington, Beckwith is a guy that I think I'd like to see Tennessee take because he is so versatile. He can help you so many places. Tennessee really needs a tight end in this class of some ilk. They need a tight end in this class, but they may feel like we can get by with Jackson Lowe and Austin Pope and Sean Brown for a year because you've got the top two tight ends in the nation are both in state next year. And Jake Brenningstool at Ravenwood, who Tennessee's very interested in and has made a bit of a push for and has made some noise with, but I still think he's a pretty heavy Clemson lean. And then Hudson Wolf out at Savannah. And
he just picked up an offer from Michigan, I think, yesterday actually too. He's going to start blowing up here pretty soon if he hasn't already.
Yeah, Wolf has already been blowing up. Michigan wants him. He's got the Tennessee offer. Alabama's very interested there. So Tennessee's going to have to fight if they want to get either of these two in-state kids next year at tight end. But they may feel like we can land one of those and we can get a guy to get us through this year. I think Beckwith can be that tight end. I think he's going to be a big receiver, small tight end.
Yeah. I think Beckwith is a guy that I agree with you. I think I would want him in this class regardless of what happens with Darnell Washington. If you land him, if you land Washington, I still think you go after Beckwith because I just watching his skill set, watching his huddle film and stuff like that. He's just a guy that, I mean, he did everything for his high school. He won, I think the Times Daily named him that region's player of the year because I think he had like 1,000 rushing yards, 500 something passing yards, and like 500 something receiving yards, and he had like 27 total touchdowns. I mean, he did everything for him. There was a game he scored 5 touchdowns in a game. I think the opposing coach's quote after the game was, "There's an S on that chest somewhere," talking about him. So he's a guy that he's I don't think he's as dynamic, obviously, of an athlete as like a Jimmy Holiday or someone like that. But he can do anything for you. He can be a tight end. He can be an H-back. He can be a receiver. He can be. I think was it you that compared him maybe to like a Jason Kroom, but as a potential.
I think he can be a Jason Kroom type. I think you can groom him into that big-bodied wide receiver. Is he a receiver? Is he a tight end? And Tennessee, with Brown, Pope, and Jackson Lowe coming back, you can get by with that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You can get by with him doing that. Dee Beckwith's just a kid that's going to help you all over the field. He may not be as dynamic as a guy like Holiday, but he's also a lot bigger than Jimmy Holiday. Jimmy Holiday, the trick is catching him, but if you can probably get him down. You may be able to catch Dee Beckwith. Now he can roll too, but if you catch Beckwith, then you got to get him down, and that's a whole different animal. That's a big athlete.
I know we started this conversation about Darnell Washington, but now we're here on Dee Beckwith, and I wanted to have a conversation about him too. How big of a deal, in your opinion, is the basketball thing with him? Is that going to be a huge deciding factor for him because he has technically basketball offers from Tennessee and Florida. I don't know how committable technically those offers are for basketball for both schools. But I know for like a school like I can't remember, it was UAB or something like that, but a smaller school for sure has offered him. You can definitely come play basketball here. How big of a deciding factor is the basketball thing going to be for him?
I think it's going to play into it. He's a really good basketball player. He's a really good basketball player. He could probably come in and be an SEC wing. He may have to work his way into it, but he can contribute to an SEC basketball roster. Matter of fact, he's good enough that I'm going to try to go down in the next month. Once we get back after Christmas in January, I'm going to go down and try to work out a weekend to go watch him play a basketball game and scout him out as a basketball prospect, not just football. He's that good. He's a good basketball player. I think it's going to factor in. I think he'd play minutes at Florida. And I'll tell you the truth, Nathaniel, right now he'd play minutes at Tennessee.
I mean, that's a good point. He probably would play some minutes at Tennessee right now.
Right now he would play minutes at Tennessee. He's not the height you would necessarily want for Tennessee right now, but he is that big, strong, thick build, and he's going to get bigger, especially if you're putting him at tight end on the football team. Mm-hmm. You know, how many times did we talk about Admiral Schofield? Looks like he ought to be playing tight end or linebacker. Beckwith kind of has that. I mean, he's 6'5". This is a big kid. He's 6'5", plays at about 225 now. If you can get him up to 235 and then get him, and you want him to be a tight end, and if Barnes wants him to be maybe a little smaller, but that big, strong banger down low that Admiral was, because Admiral played a lot of power forward for Tennessee, playing opposite Grant, who was really playing center for some of his time there. And Admiral wasn't as tall as other guys, but he just out-muscled them. Beckwith could be that guy. He's got that build, and Tennessee has shown under Rick Barnes you can have success with a guy like that. So I think he could play for Tennessee. I think it's probably a committable offer. Now, the issue for the Vols in basketball right now is you're going to have to get a big man.
Yeah.
You're very limited in scholarships in basketball right now, and you have got to get a big man because everybody right now is a wing. Everybody's a wing or a point guard, and you've got to get a big forward. Dee is not that true big forward, but he can come in and muscle in and play some of that. Maybe you feel like he's able to help you there. I think the basketball offer moved the needle. That was what put Florida really in contention above everybody else for him at the time. And then after he got the Tennessee basketball offer, that really changed his mind and opened his eyes as well. So I think it matters. And I think he's a kid who's going to get to campus and play both sports. I really do. I believe he'll play both.
He's just such an interesting prospect to me. I think I even forgot to. No, I mentioned it in my piece that he talked about basketball and stuff because I mentioned that Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Florida have all offered him as basketball and football guys. Kentucky hasn't offered him in basketball, but they have offered him in football, and I think he's kind of discounted Ole Miss as an option. I think Dee Beckwith is a take no matter what. Even like we said, if Darnell Washington's in this class, I Beckwith maybe doesn't have the direct line to the field as a tight end that you would expect without Washington being on the roster. But if you get Washington, I still think you still take Dee Beckwith, and we'll hold off on that conversation here in a minute because I want to have a conversation at the end of this podcast talking about what we think Tennessee's kind of dream finish to this class would be already with 21 signees. How do they fill out the class? And what we think would be kind of the dream scenario for Tennessee finishing out on February. But before we get to that, there's a couple of names we wanted to mention that we didn't mention last podcast, Brandon. That as soon as we stopped hitting record, there's a guy who said, "Oh man, I wish I'd said this guy." As far as some guys that Tennessee might target, I'll let you give the one you want to give, and I'll talk about the other one. The one you're talking about is a Vanderbilt commit that you think Tennessee is going to start pursuing.
Yeah, right now, and we finished recording last week. And I said, "Oh man, I should have talked about Donovan Kaufman." Donovan Kaufman is currently committed to Vanderbilt. He is a 5'9", 195. He's listed as a safety out of Louisiana. I think he might be more of a corner at the next level. He has visited Tennessee. He was there on that last official visit weekend. He came in. There was a lot of noise with Vanderbilt fans about, is he going to sign in the early signing period? Is he going to wait? And Donovan decided, his statement was that I want to keep my options open. I want to wait until February. Right now I'm still committed, but I want to see what else comes in because his recruitment started to pick up late. There was an uptick in interest in him. He's a good player. He's a quality player. Again, if Vanderbilt's going to take him, he's smart. I like his film. I like what I see on tape of him. Tennessee's pretty loaded at safety. I think they would like to get another corner. They haven't been able to really replace losing Name just left me.
Mordecai McDaniel.
Mordecai McDaniel. I could see his face and I lost his name. They've not really been a. Man, that's a lot of names in this class to keep up with. They've not really replaced the corner since they lost Mordecai McDaniel, and he was kind of looking to be the man cover corner in this class. Keyshawn Lawrence is going to get a look there, I believe. I think he's really going to get a long, hard look at corner. The staff likes him there. They believe he can play there. I think Kaufman makes sense as getting a look at corner. He can play safety too, but I think he'll get a look at corner if Tennessee can flip him. I think he's a 4-star on Rivals. He's a high 3-star on 247. His tape's good. He's a solid player. And it's a position Tennessee would like to fill. I don't know that it is as big a need as tight end wide receiver right now, but it is a position they would like to fill. They would like to get that other corner.
Yeah, I think he's an interesting one to me to see if they get him to come visit and see what happens, because I agree with you. I think they could use another corner, another defensive back in this class, and that'll kind of feed into a conversation we'll have here in just a second too. But the other one I wanted to mention that I don't think we mentioned last podcast, because I don't remember us mentioning him, was Jakari Caldwell, who's a receiver who is getting a ton of attention. Him and Corey Wren, I think, are going to be two of the receivers that are going to blow up the most, I think, between now and February. We've already seen Wren, I think, starting to get offers from Oklahoma and Texas, along with more interest from Tennessee. I think Tennessee is pushing to get him to come visit sometime in January. Jakari Caldwell is a guy who he would be the different type of receiver in this class. Corey Wren is also a speedster guy. He's got like I think a 10.41 100 meter. I mean, that's an incredibly fast guy. I think it's almost exactly what Jalen Hyatt is. I think Hyatt's like a 10.46. So you're talking about like a 500ths of a second difference between the two as far as their personal records in the 100 meter. We've seen how fast Jalen can fly, so you know how good Corey Wren is. Wren's a little shorter though. He's like 5'9", but he's got that. I've seen someone compare him to like a Kadarius Toney. He's got that kind of just like jitterbug type of ability. If Toney could stay healthy was in a better offensive suited for him. But anyway, Jakari Caldwell is the exact opposite of what Tennessee has in this class already, and what they have signed with Jalen Hyatt and Jimmy Callaway. Caldwell is 6'4". He's a big body guy. He's not necessarily slow. He's actually pretty quick. I watched him do a tunnel screen on a play, and he just ended up outrunning everybody. That could also have been maybe the competition he's playing against, but he, along with Jalen Hyatt, played in that Shrine Bowl of the Carolinas this past weekend, and obviously Hyatt was the big standout, got the MVP, 197 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns in that game. But Caldwell also turned some heads, and he's picked up, I think, since like November 28th or so. I counted up on his Twitter account. He's got like 9 FBS, or not even SBS, but 9 Power 5 offers. The most recent one from Tennessee on December 8th. He did get one from South Carolina on December 2nd, and it seems like he's a South Carolina kid. And it seems like from the interviews he's done from after he got that offer, I think Brandon, he'll be a Gamecock if they have room for him and if they end up really pursuing him hard. But he's a guy that I would love to see Tennessee go after, because he would be your big body receiver guy. If you have Dee Beckwith, you could also obviously be that case too. But I think Jakari Caldwell is a really good receiver. I'm not the only one. I'd heard about him. I remember when Tennessee offered him, but I'd kind of forgotten about him. And then last week, it might have been, I think it was actually during the early signing period. I don't think it was the 2 days leading up to it. I think it was actually on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. But Jason Swain was talking about him on the Swain event. And if Swain really likes the receiver, watching his film, and really likes what he sees from the kid watching a film, he's a good receiver. Swain loves watching film. Swain played receiver at a high level. He was a high-level recruit himself coming out of high school. If Swain likes a guy as a wideout, that tells you all you need to know. So I already liked him, and then the fact that Swain signs off on him makes me think Tennessee would be very lucky to get him. I just think this time South Carolina might actually be able to hold on to a highly rated kid out of their own backyard. They've messed up twice doing that with Bryce Thompson and Jalen Hyatt. I don't think they'll mess up a third time.
It's going to be interesting because you don't know how bad they need a wide receiver. It's going to come down to priority too, because what does Carolina, when they look at their roster and they look at their class, what does Carolina say? This is what I need. You're also bringing in a new offensive coordinator and Mike Bobo down there in Columbia, and Bobo may look at Caldwell and go, yeah, he's a really talented receiver, but I need this offensive lineman that fits my scheme. I need this versus I want Caldwell. And Carolina has already signed a couple of, in the last 2 or 3 years, they've signed some good receivers. They've got a nice young receiving core down there. They already added Mike Wyman this year. They had another highly rated recruit sign in this class. So I know they've got at least 2 wide receivers signed already, and had guys like Xavier Legette last year who came in, who's a really, really good player. And Caldwell's recruitment kind of reminds me of Legette. It's one of those things where Caldwell, he doesn't camp much. He is a multi-sport athlete. He's football, basketball, track. Didn't get on the camp scene. Didn't get a lot of hype. Didn't release his senior tape until late. And if you have been watching Jeremy Pruitt since he's been at Tennessee, that is the recipe of a Jeremy Pruitt special. Those are the kids that he finds, and then when he offers, everybody else offers. And as their tape starts to go out, it's like, oh, this kid's really good. Caldwell apparently runs in the low 4.4s.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he's not slow. Watching his film, I could tell he wasn't slow.
Yeah, he runs in the low 4.4s, so he's not high. He's not Holiday. He's not Jimmy Callaway. But you're still talking about a kid that, and especially at 6'4", 6'5", can just get up and run away from you. Big catch radius, good hands. Routes need some work. When he really sharpens his routes up, when he does run one that's very sudden and very crisp, man, he's tough to defend. And that I know the tunnel screen you're talking about. If he gets a block, he's gone. He can really fly with the ball in his hand. He likes that tunnel screen. He's comfortable coming inside to catch it. He's an interesting prospect. It's going to come down to Tennessee and Carolina, I think, for him. I'm with you. I think Carolina is the favorite here, but if it may also come down to Carolina wants him, Tennessee needs him and wants him, and that may factor in.
Yeah, he's going to be very interesting. That's, I think, of the kind of not specialists, but of like the skill position guys outside of the obvious 4 or 5 star guys that haven't signed anywhere and still are still looking for homes or whatever between now and February, of the kind of lower rated guys who I think will blow up, because I fully expect Jakari Caldwell to blow up and be a 4-star at some point, because he hasn't been rated in a while, especially on Rivals, I don't think. But I don't know if Corey Wren will, because of his height. I don't know if they'll get him to a 4-star status because of him being. He's listed at 5'9", so I'd imagine he's probably closer to 5'8" or something like that. But either one of those guys, I think they're going to be highly contested and gone after. I mean, Wren was committed to Georgia, so either he got a get shirt or whatever it was, they still thought highly enough for one point to take his commitment. So that should tell you all you need to know about. Excuse me. I need to know about him. Like I said, he's gotten offers from Oklahoma, Texas, and a few other schools in the last few days, and his recruitment's going to really, really blow up. Brandon, I already kind of touched on it here for a little bit, so let's go ahead and get into the conversation. Kind of one of the last things here before we talk about the dream finish of the class. What all does Tennessee have a need on? Obviously, we both kind of think tight end's a need for Tennessee if they can get Darnell Washington. If not, we think Dee Beckwith will be where they go. And besides that, we don't really know. I think we both can agree that we'd like to see Tennessee get another defensive back of some sort. If it's a safety, you can maybe put Keyshawn Lawrence at corner. If it's a corner, maybe you still play Keyshawn at safety or at corner, but maybe even the safety. Either way, I think another defensive back would be nice in this class for Tennessee. But outside of those two, what else does Tennessee need? I think that they need to continue to fill out the defensive line. Obviously Jay Hardy is going to be a big target, probably target number 1 for Tennessee, because obviously Darnell Washington has already signed, so he's not technically a target anymore because they know one way or the other where he's going. But Jay Hardy is going to be your top target, but who still hasn't signed yet and won't be signing until February. So obviously kind of filling out the defensive line with him. But I think it would behoove Tennessee, whether it's keeping Kyrie Miller in this class or getting Jalen St. John or whatever. I think getting another offensive lineman would not be a bad idea either.
I think Tennessee would like to get, if we're talking about what they would like to get, I think you would like to get someone that can help you at wide receiver. I think you would like to get a defensive back that you feel like is more of a corner than a safety, because Tennessee has a lot of guys on this roster playing safety. They need some corners. I think they would like to get a guy that looks more like a corner. They would like to help the defensive line. They would like to help the offensive line. Specifically on the offensive line, they'd really like to get a tackle. They've got a lot of interior guys in this class. They would like to get someone that they feel is a tackle. The interesting thing is going to be, if you're Tennessee and you add to the defensive line, you may potentially see the Vols get a defensive lineman. Like it may be a Jay Hardy. You may have to get another defensive lineman before Tennessee wants to do this. But if the Vols land Jay Hardy, Reginald Perry is going to get a hard look at offensive tackle.
Yeah, I agree.
They've already talked with him about that. If the Vols land Jay Hardy, Reginald Perry is going to get a hard look at offensive tackle. If they decide they want to go that route with him, they're probably going to release Kyrie Miller out of the class and let him go elsewhere. And then Tennessee would like to get a receiver, tight end, whoever that is. Maybe it's another defensive end. I think it gets fluid at that point because you're kind of in a place you can take the best available. The biggest need left in my mind is you've got to get a wide receiver. You have to get one more. You've got so much talent leaving this year, and you have so much talent leaving next year, and Harrison Bailey is the future of this program. You are bringing Harrison in. You are building an offense around him. And for all the pressure that's on him, I think he's up for it. I think he's known that for a long time. But the expectation is going to be for Harrison Bailey to come in and use his talents to take Tennessee to that next level. And if you're going to rely on him like that, you got to give him guys to throw to. He's got to have weapons. They've done a good job of bringing guys in right now, but you're going to have to keep that pipeline going. You're going to have to keep these weapons coming in. They need a receiver. They really would like to get a receiver and a tight end, but they've got to get a receiver. And I think more they're not. I don't think they're going to take a defensive back just on the purpose of taking a defensive back. I think you're going to have to be able to play corner. If you're just a pure safety, unless you're really good, I don't think Tennessee's going to be taking a scholarship there. You've got to be able to at least get a look at corner.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. I think that's a fair breakdown of what Tennessee, kind of what their biggest needs are remaining in this class, and kind of what they could hope to accomplish between now and February on National Signing Day. Brandon, the last kind of thing here I want to talk about, and I think this kind of fits in perfectly with what we were just talking about, is what is their dream finish this class? Obviously, Darnell Washington and Jay Hardy. You can include those two in the dream scenario. And I think Dee Beckwith would be kind of another kind of dream scenario guy. If I think all things considered, if you have room for him and Washington and Hardy, I think you're taking all three no matter what. But what about, depending on kind of what happens here, do you take a Zaquandre White? I don't think so anymore since you were able to get Whitehead. I think maybe getting Corey Wren or Jakart Caldwell. I think getting another receiver would be that big finish, and getting, as you just said, another defensive back. So I think that'd be 5 guys, and that would be, potentially, like I said, letting Kyrie Miller go, Darian Williamson being probably a blue shirt candidate for this class, and then that would also kind of leave you a spot, I think, open for a transfer or two that you would bring in as a grad transfer, as I do think Tennessee is going to be at least looking. I don't know how many they'll actually bring in, but I think Tennessee is going to be actively looking in the transfer market this offseason for help somewhere. I don't think it'll be obviously at quarterback. I don't think it'll be running back either, because they seem pretty stacked about those areas. But maybe a receiver, maybe somewhere on the offensive line or defensive line, especially considering what happens with Trey Smith and whether or not Brandon Kennedy gets his 6th year eligibility. I think that could really affect what Tennessee wants to do from a grad transfer perspective on the offensive line. But I think obviously the first two, Washington and Hardy, that's no exceptions. You can't be a dream finish without those two. I think Dee Beckwith factors in, and then I think your other 2 spots, I think you would probably take 2 more at this point, would be getting another receiver and then getting another defensive back, and however that is. I don't know if you have a specific guy you want to mention that would be the dream scenario for you, but I think either Corey Wren or Jakart Caldwell or someone else that could emerge here soon or whatever as a receiver, and then, as we mentioned, a couple of defensive backs that I think could kind of round out the class. That to me would be, I think, the dream scenario for Tennessee. Really, I think you could just say getting Washington and Hardy. I think that would be a dream scenario enough, and anything else is icing on the cake at that point. I think getting those two would be a smash hit home run for Tennessee to close things out between here and February, and anything else you could just say would be icing on the cake. But if we're going to fledge it all out, I think those two, Dee Beckwith, and then two of your biggest needs remaining.
If you're asking me what 5 guys I would like to see Tennessee take, what would be my dream finish for the last 5 guys, it would be Darnell Washington to come in and play tight end. It would be Jay Hardy to come in and just plug in on the defensive line wherever you need him to and do Jay Hardy things, which is wreck people's worlds. Dee Beckwith, because wherever I need help, this is a kid that can help me. He can be that big-bodied, big, strong, thick wide receiver that Tennessee's not got in this class. He can come in and run this Jawan Jennings Wildcat quarterback package. He can throw a little bit out of it. He can help you some at quarterback. He's got a good arm. He can be a tight end. They've talked to him about playing linebacker.
Of course they have.
so this is a kid that I think his versatility, what he brings to the game, his attitude, he's a very bright kid. He's a very well-spoken kid. He brings a lot in there. I think he's a guy you want to add to your team if you get the opportunity. He can help you too many places of need. And then the 2 that I would say after that, I would rather see Tennessee take a Donovan Kaufman. I like Kaufman's film a lot. I like him coming in as more of a corner. And I think that helps an area of need. And then where I'm sort of torn is, and I'm leaning towards, I would rather see, I think maybe Tennessee take Andy Boykin.
That's right, you mentioned in the last podcast.
Yeah, I like Boykin. I like Boykin a lot. If you could get him, I think you probably wind up letting Kyrie Miller go out of the class. But if you get Hardy and Boykin, you can move Perry to offense. And Perry helps you at that tackle position as well. Because when you look at Kyrie Miller, you're going, he's played guard in high school. Does he have the feet for tackle? We think we can turn him into a tackle, but we're not sure. And he was always going to be that issue in that project. If you put Perry on the offensive line, Perry's an offensive tackle. That's it, period, the end. That's where you're putting him. And so I feel like if you could get Boykin and Hardy, that's 2 impact players on the defensive line. Boykin is a different animal than I think probably anybody Tennessee's got on the defensive line right now. You move Perry over to offense, so you fill your need at offensive tackle. You get 2 impact players on defense. At that point, you'd be filling your need at corner, which makes your defensive backfield better. You would have Darnell Washington, and then you get a guy in Dee Beckwith who can come in and be that change of pace, that different receiver that teams have got to account for. And I think you can address all your needs and feel good about them with those 5 guys. That would be the 5 guys I would love to see them end up with.
That would be a good finish to the class. Like I said, I think really anything you could throw in after, if Tennessee gets Washington and Hardy, I don't think anyone else is really going to complain about whoever else they get in this class. I think that would be the dream scenario, and then everything else, like I said, would just be kind of icing on what would be a probably very close to a top 10 class, consensus top 10, because you're already right now a top 10 class on Rivals. If you get Washington and Hardy, you're going to be knocking on that top 10 door on every site. So
if they get Hardy and Washington, they'll be in the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, you'd get a top 10 player in Washington, and you get a guy who Hardy should be a top 100. He's right outside it, but I'd imagine that. I don't know if he'll get a bump or not. He should get a bump. He should be, even if it's just like number 99, he should be a top 100 kid, in my opinion, for this class. Watching he finally put out his senior film not too long ago. I had to watch his senior highlights when I was doing the piece that I did that's come out today about Tennessee's top targets. Man, his junior highlight film was really impressive. Man, Brandon, I see what you meant by when you guys got to go see him. His senior film is it's another level. I mean, like I said, his junior highlights were impressive, but he took another step this year as a senior. He really did. Yeah,
he is I've said this about several guys in this class. A man that big is not supposed to be that fast. Jay Hardy is an athlete on par with Amari Thomas. I mean, those 2 guys can run. At 300 pounds plus, they can run. I don't mean for big guys. I mean period.
Yeah.
And you don't see that. Hardy and Thomas both move like defensive ends in a 4-3 scheme. Guys that are 40, 50 pounds lighter than them. And they can run like that. And when you look at the hand technique that both guys have got, especially Hardy uses his hands remarkably well. And Hardy can speed rush you. He can technique rush you. He can bull rush you. Whatever he needs to do, he's got it in his toolbox. He can line up anywhere on the defensive line, and he is a nightmare to block wherever you put him. Hardy fits anywhere on the line, in any front you want to run, and you have to deal with him. He is a special, special player.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll get to see Tennessee get him, and that he won't be going to Auburn. But we'll see. That's going to be a fun recruitment to follow here between now and February. Brandon, actually, one thing here before we go. It's going to be an early mailbag question. I know, like I said, Matt and I will be doing that later this week. But I have an early mailbag question for you, Brandon. One guy that I included in my piece, and I added the caveat that Tennessee hasn't really seemed to get a lot of traction there, but with the potential of Tennessee maybe wanting to get another offensive lineman, I wonder how much they kind of kick the tires here. Is there going to be any kind of do we expect to see Tennessee kind of pursue anything with Marcus Henderson here in the next few weeks? Because that's another Memphis kid that Tennessee had tried to multiple times, I think, before get him on campus. He has never been. I don't know if he's ever been to campus, but he hasn't been to campus in a while. Is that a guy you'd try to get to come visit here in January, or is that just kind of a it looks like from what I've seen from his social media, from what I've seen from other stuff, it looks like he might be trending towards Arkansas. So I wonder if Tennessee is going to try with him or not.
Tennessee has been hot and cold on Marcus all season. There were stretches this year where they'd really kind of warm up to him and seem like they were getting interested, and then they'd back off and they'd come back on. Leading up to the early signing period, it seemed like they backed off a bit. I think if Tennessee wanted to pursue Marcus Henderson, and if they made up their mind that we want Marcus Henderson, not as a backup plan, but we see something in Marcus Henderson we believe he can help this team, and we want him, I think they could land him. I think it's just a matter of deciding that you want to go after him. And I'm surprised Tennessee is not more interested in him, because I believe he can help you on both sides of the ball. He's a technician as an offensive tackle. He's a very, very good offensive guard. He may translate better to guard at the next level because of the length of his arms. His arms are a little short for a tackle. He may translate better to a guard at the next level. But he was a really, really good defensive end. Again, I got a chance to watch him work head-on-head against Amari Thomas for a whole game, and those two guys just both sides of the ball going head-to-head. It was outstanding to watch. Marcus can rush the passer, and he's the size Tennessee likes for their 3-4 ends. I think maybe the one thing that's hurting Marcus right now with Tennessee is he is a little light for what they like in their offensive linemen. Mm-hmm. I think they'd want to put some more weight on him, and I think he would lose some of his explosion on defense for that. But he's a guy that I feel like can help Tennessee on both sides of the ball. I'm surprised that they're not pushing there, especially at this stage, when you're looking at a guy like a Kyrie Miller and a guy like a Reginald Perry. I mean, I feel like Henderson is I'll be honest with you, I feel like Henderson's better than both of those guys. That's just me, but I think he's better than those two guys. Very different player than either of them. Miller and Reginald Perry are both bigger, but I think Henderson is a lot more explosive than both. A lot quicker than both. I would like to see Tennessee, and he's not going to be the project that those guys are. For Henderson, the issue is going to be, where do you want to put him? And now let's bulk him up a bit.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's all you're going to have to teach him to do. He's got the rest of it. So I wouldn't be stunned to see Tennessee get back involved there once they reset their board. But I'm like you. I think he's going to Arkansas. I think Tennessee could get involved there if they wanted to and make it interesting. But he just seems like a Sam Pittman guy to me.
Yeah, and with Sam Pittman being in Arkansas now, I wouldn't fault any offensive lineman for wanting to go there. And they just hired a few hours before we start recording this podcast. They just announced the hiring of Kendall Briles as the OC. So it's going to be a very different Arkansas. Maybe not this upcoming season, because I think it's going to take a while to really turn that around, because they have just a smorgasbord of an offense right now, because of the roster's not really suited for anything, because you have half of a Morris offense of recruit, half of a Bielema offensive. So it's two very different types of offense. And now Sam Pittman comes in there and is going to have to kind of figure out what to do there. So it's going to be, I think, a couple years before you really see, I guess, that all kind of come together. But he for all the question marks I had about Sam Pittman as a head coach, of him never being even a coordinator before. He's made 2 darn good coordinator hires with Kendall Briles. At least, I'm not a big Kendall Briles fan off the field at all, but of Kendall Briles, and then also Barry Odom as his DC. I mean, he's got 2 experienced, considered really high quality coordinators to help him out.
I think he's made 2 excellent coordinator hires. He's also gotten 2 guys that recruit well. Odom's also going to recruit that area well. Yep. I think Arkansas could get this thing turned around on offense a lot faster than people think, because you look at potential offensive linemen for them right now, which is going to be where Pittman's bread gets buttered. They are a very, very real chance to win out for Jalen St. John. They have a very real chance to win out for Marcus Henderson. They flipped an offensive tackle whose name escapes me at the moment that had been committed to Missouri. He plays at White Station in Memphis.
Uh-huh.
They flipped him, a high 3-star player, and they had a very high 4-star offensive tackle, Tykeus Crawford, committed to them for a long time. When Morris got fired, he decommitted. He hasn't signed anywhere. I got to talk to him when he decommitted because he'd had a Tennessee offer. I wanted to see if Tennessee was involved with him, and he was still pretty heartbroken. He still cared about Arkansas. If you're Sam Pittman and you pull those 4 guys in, you sign Darren Turner out of Memphis Central in this class, Trey Knox is still on that roster.
Mm-hmm.
Go get a running back and use Kendall Briles to find yourself a quarterback, and that offense all of a sudden has got an identity. Now, they'll be young, and it may take a year or 2 to see it pay off, but I mean, I think you could see that offense have an identity and be better than people are expecting. What Pittman's doing reminds me a lot of what Pruitt did.
Yeah, I think a year later, because Pruitt, it didn't get Chaney in here until his second season, but that's a very good point. I think it took Pruitt, I think, a year to realize that, but I agree with you. I think both those guys have made really good coordinator hires over the past year plus at this point. For Tennessee, it was last year, and for Arkansas, it's this year. But yeah, that's a very good point. Brandon, we're going to end this podcast. Hopefully all of you listening along, whether it's before Christmas, after Christmas, hopefully all of you are having a wonderful holiday time of the year. If you're celebrating with family, hopefully you're having a good time. If you're not, hopefully you can get through it. I know sometimes the holidays can be rough for some people, so I hope you guys are having a good time. Hopefully if you're having a rough time, this is a good escape for you guys, and that you're having a good day listening to us talk about things that aren't as important, talking about recruiting, talking about the more entertaining and fun aspects of life. Brandon, if there's anything you want to plug for VR2, go at it.
Just keep your eyes peeled on us. Once the new year gets here, we're going to get back in this hard and fast. Again, once the dead period ends, we're going to be running up to the signing day in February. Going to try to get down. We're going to watch a few Tennessee targets and recruits that are also basketball players. So we're going to be getting some basketball highlights for you, some guys that are upcoming in the basketball recruiting class. We're going to get some football players that play basketball as well, and look at them in a different light, see what you see from the 2 different sports to bring to them, talk with them a little bit more about some of these guys that have now signed. So there'll be new interviews coming out in that area. We're over at VR2.site. You can find us on Twitter at _VR2_. You can find me, Brandon _VR2. If you're headed down to the bowl game, we're going to have a couple of guys down in Jacksonville. If you see us around, just wave. We'd love to talk to you. We'd love to do whatever we can with you if you see us down there. But just like Nathaniel did, from all of us at VR2, we want to wish you and yours a very, very Merry Christmas, a happy holiday season, a blessed New Year. We're so thankful for you guys. You make all what we're doing worthwhile. We do this because we love it. We do this because we love this team like you do, and we do it because we love you guys. We like trying to bring you the best information that we can. We can't thank you enough for listening, so we're so grateful for you, and we appreciate all that you do.
Absolutely, Brandon. You said it there. We're very grateful for all of you here. Like I said, you guys at VR2, we're also very grateful at RTI. That this has been, for me at Rocky Top Insider, easily our best year in terms of just feedback from our listeners, our readers, everything we've done on this site. It's been a banner year for RTI, and obviously that's because of you guys and all the interest you show us. And I wouldn't have a job if it wasn't for Vol fans and for people like you all who listen to our content, who interact with us and everything. So honestly, this isn't just lip service. For the bottom of my heart, thank you all so much for making 2019 a great year for me professionally, and and I'm glad Tennessee, for the most part, helped kind of give you guys reason to celebrate this year too. In basketball, Tennessee was number one for a while, made it to the NCAA tournament, got to Sweet 16. Baseball had their best season in a long time. Football turned things around after a rough start, so it looks like Lady Vols also are doing some things well. So, 2019 was a lot better of an ending to probably the worst decade of Tennessee athletics that we've ever seen. But the ending has been quite a bit better than different parts of it. So we may do some kind of big decade retrospective at some point, but. For now, though,
you're going to make me drink, Nathaniel.
Yeah, that'll be one we'll have to do not sober. That'd be an interesting podcast to do. But I think this will be a good one to end this now. We appreciate you all again. And until next time, this has been another episode of the RTI and VR2 Recruiting Podcast.